Okay. I have what many would call a very large head. There was a very common joke that a cousin of mine, when she was watching me as a kid, dropped me on my head. My head swelled up and it just never went back down. And that was a story I believed for many years as a child. I remember when I joined like a pee-wee football league as a kid for a Catholic school. I remember my parents having to buy me my own helmet. All of the helmets that the school had, none of them quite fit right. This next thing is something I do not admit lightly, and I like to preface it by saying I have grown a lot as a person and I no longer hold the same beliefs as I once did. I used to like fedoras, but you know what happens when you have a nearly adult size head by the time you're 10 years old? You can't just go out and buy any sort of fedora and thinking you can just slap it on this noggin of yours, but it just doesn't work. So my grandmother asked my mother for my head measurements one day, and it turns out she had gone to a store with my custom measurements, and she either got a hat custom made or she went and, got one in my size, like my specific head size, and she got it to me as a gift, and it's still one of the most genuine gifts I've ever gotten in my life. And you know what? I never wore this thing in public though, and I'm glad my young self like got this thing and just knew not to do something like that where in public. I feel like I still had some amount of understanding. I'm like, this is cool, but it's not something I'm just gonna wear out and about like with any sort of clothing. It was just something I held on to, and I really liked having. Fast forward a good couple years, I'm in high school, and I'm obviously still growing. I initially wore a large size football helmet going into my freshman year, but even then, that was like a little tight. But then by my sophomore year of high school, I had to go to an extra large helmet. A large helmet just did not fit me well enough. It hurt actively just wearing it. But fun fact, my high school only had a singular extra large helmet. So I didn't have much of a choice in terms of one felt better than the other. I just had to take the one that they had, which is important for later. So it's summertime just before my sophomore year, and we're doing practices and double sessions and everything. Double sessions fucking sucked, and I don't think they make much sense. 2 3-hour sessions of practice that no one enjoyed, and we still went like 1 in 15 in that regular season. During one practice, and I remember this play vividly, I was linebacker and it was a sweep to the right, and I was on the right side. As I tried to go around the tight end, I met with a guard. He had to have weighed about 300 pounds, so he had a good 130 pounds on me. So he had a small human in weight on me, plus one of the most athletic human beings I have ever met in my life, crushing into me. It was double helmet to helmet contact. The next day, I was not feeling so hot, so I went to the trainer, did the testing and everything, and it turned out I had the concussion. That really sucked. I wasn't feeling too terrible from the concussion, at least in comparison of what's to come, but I had to not exercise heavily or practice or do any sort of contact sports for 2 weeks. Well, wouldn't you know it, our opening a game against the rival city was about a week and a half out. And guess who was cleared early for this but probably shouldn't have? Oh, you, right? Yeah, me. I wasn't feeling necessarily bad going into the game or anything. It should have been an indicator that I got concussed early on with this new helmet after playing an entire season before it with no problems. Going into the game, I'm playing both center and linebacker. Bit of a strange combo, I know. There's a specific play that I will always remember. It was another sweep, but this time far left, and I was on the opposite side. I was trying to run down the ball carrier. As I'm getting close to them, I tripped on something. This team, we were playing at their field. They don't have turf. It was uneven. It's not an even out field. Their field fucking sucked. I hated it. It led to a very hard fall where all of my weight landed on my forehead. I may have stayed in for like one more play, but then I just was not feeling the best, so I came off the field. Something that may have or just kept me from harming myself worse was the trainer that I mentioned before. She was just a temp trainer for our school, and she actually got hired by the other team. She was at the game, obviously, because she was the trainer for the other team. She came over to our sidelines after I had landed. She had seen how I had landed, and she came over and talked to my coach. This is where this day gets very hairy for me, and I don't remember a whole lot of details of it. I do know I was like on the sidelines. I don't feel too well for a while, and I felt like a little bit better, so I tried to get back in the game. And then my coach just basically told me, no, go sit, like you're not playing anymore today. After I'm done talking to my coach and I go and I sit down, as soon as I sit down, like my recollection up until the end of the game is like nothing. Like I know we lost the game, but I don't remember any details other than that. So after the game, my mother was there it's like they watched and everything. They didn't really know anything was wrong. My coach talked to her. She said she was going to take me home with them to keep an eye on me rather than me, go back on the bus with my team. So I start walking with my mom on the field towards like where her car is. I don't make it more than like 15, 20 yards before I have to sit down and like take my breath and like, so my head, I have like vertigo and I just can't make it very far. I am feeling terrible. This story sucks because it's just so like, my mom agreed to take me to the emergency room, but the problem is we had to go to my great-grandmother's birthday party first. In complete honesty, I don't remember if the decision to go to the emergency room was while we were still at the field or if it happened like while we were at the party. A quick fast fact about me, early on in grade school, I had to take a few weeks of anger management courses due to, I think, like punching someone on the playground. All of that went out the fucking window while I was at this party. So at my great-grandma's birthday party, this is my dad's side of the family, small town vibes, all this stuff. My father's family is friends with just about everybody in town. My father's second grade teacher is at this party for some reason, and she has a camera with I don't know if it was a digital camera with a flash or like a wind-up camera with a flash, but she was taking photos of like me and my siblings and my grandmother and like everybody. And she took I was in enough photos that like the flash and the sound and everything, it was really getting to me to the point where I think I like told my mother I wanted to assault this woman. Like I was that far down, like desperation rabbit hole of like pain. We finally end up leaving the party. We go to the emergency room. I get a CT scan. They give me some kind of painkiller. I get home. I go upstairs to my bedroom. I lay in bed, and I slept for something like 18 hours, which is a real scary thing when you're concussed. People have slipped into comas after concussions and stuff like that. It's a sketchy time. Thankfully, I woke up, or unthankfully. What does that mean? The next like few weeks of time, I do not remember. Before I was like officially diagnosed with another concussion and post-concussion syndrome. I don't know what the exact treatment I was going under because this was just from I think my pediatrician at the time, or like maybe what specialty doctor they had in my small town. Whatever it wasn't helping because I was going to school and having to leave. There was multiple days in a row where I was leaving school at like 10:30 a.m. after getting there at 8. I couldn't get through more than 2.5 hours of school without just like wanting to die. Just terrible mental exhaustion. I had headaches the entire time, but it was more the headaches were leading me to my mental fatigue way sooner than I should have been. It was a real frustrating time because it just felt bad to, reach this point of exhaustion so easily, it felt like. But it got so bad that I actually got pulled out of school. Like I had to go to the Cleveland Clinic to see a specialist. One of the best doctors I've ever worked with, though. He listened thoroughly, worked with me and my family, and I don't think it was thankfully it wasn't very expensive because, it's America. Healthcare industry, blah, blah, blah. But even with him being a good doctor, the process was terrible. It was real difficult for me. A traumatic brain injury, especially happening relatively close to another, is an immensely scary thing, and it's difficult to fully understand the ramifications. I'm still not certain if I have brain damage or not. I was put on medication treatment of Tylenol and Aleve at first, where I took certain batches of Tylenol and Aleve twice a day. And it helped for a while, but it led to rebound headaches because of some process with how that medicine works. Both I probably was also building up a tolerance. And then they put me on a certain kind of headache medicine or something. I don't know what it was called exactly. And I lost something like 40 pounds in a month. Like it killed my hunger. On top of the medication, I wasn't allowed to exercise. They were scared of me hitting my head while I was lifting, which like I can understand, but I feel like the ramifications of that, it probably led in part to some amount of my weight loss because I probably lost muscle due to just inactivity. But I also feel like it led me into my my obesity at the beginning of college. Like I had such a good base, and I feel like when I was a freshman going into my sophomore year, I was in great shape. I felt great and everything. And then this injury completely threw a curveball and like kind of fucked me over. On top of this, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and it's been a very eye-opening thing for a lot of reasons. Because after my concussions, my ability to focus was obviously greatly hindered, especially during the times when I had pain. I had consistent headache pain for probably at least 2.5 years after the second concussion. But then the mind fogginess and issues with concentration have sticked with me. And I had those issues before, but they weren't as bad. And with being diagnosed with ADHD, it kind of makes sense. I feel like the concussions, in a way, sort of ramped up the issues I was having. But let's get back on the timeline a little bit. So I was pulled out of school towards the end of 2012. I don't remember the exact date, but it had to have been like early October. And then I was out until April of next year. I do know the time frame was about 6 months, so October to April makes sense. I did start cyber school when I was pulled out, but for the first probably 2 months, 2.5 months, I couldn't even do that. I was just seeing doctors and trying to take care of myself in a sense. And that led to me having to drop one of my classes. But thankfully, I was already ahead. Like I was ahead like a science credit or something in high school already. So that didn't negatively impact me too much. That time during those 6 months of being out of school was a very interesting time in my life. A lot of it was just like this lethargic, shitty feeling. But I also just, I played a lot of video games, like, because I couldn't do much else. And this is the time when I really got into League of Legends. So a toxic video game community plus a brain injury. Boy, howdy, I was set to conquer the world. I got through the rest of high school by having a get out of school anytime doctor's note that just said I could leave anytime if I felt the need to. And I very obviously abused this. And another fun fact, which that marks fun fact number 2 of the video, we figured out that my helmet's padding had gone bad in the front part of it, and that was likely the cause of my repeated injuries. When I was about to take the helmet back to school to turn it in and everything, I was just kind of playing around with it, and I noticed that the front padding had no give, like you could knock on it. I don't know how that's something I overlooked. I don't know how it's something the school never noticed and just gave it to me. Most of my pains and aches are at my forehead. That's what my 2 concussions have in common, is the place of impact was my forehead. Most of the major aches and pains of my injury are gone. Like the fogginess and like headaches I had for the like 2 years post were some of the worst I've ever had. But I still do get frequent migraines and headaches. Thankfully, I'm still on preventative medication, and I've really started to notice the long-term effects of like this injury, and I just don't like them. I'm also sort of terrified at the idea of getting Alzheimer's, which I know is like an extreme worry, but I'm kind of just speaking like what I'm thinking. Repeated brain trauma can lead to early onset, and it can also just lead to a higher risk chance of those things. I feel like this video is kind of sad out of nowhere, but I just had to talk about this for like my personal sake. I do a lot of writing for these things in my long commutes or long drives, like using text to speech. And I remember when I was doing this one, like I almost started crying. It's a very traumatic experience for me to like kind of look back on, realizing just how much pain I was in, like everything that I went through during the process, and how I might not be done feeling the ramifications of the injury because I don't have the resources or the time to see a specialist and really figure out what I could be dealing with. What I'll leave you with is please protect yourselves, protect your kids, do your best to keep things like this from happening because it's easily preventable from happening. Just be very check equipment and everything if you're going to play a contact sport more thoroughly than you might think you need to. I thought I was safe to use equipment because I was given it by my coaches, but I guess not. So yeah, stay safe, all that stuff. Nice day. Goodbye.